America's Heartland is made possible by Farm Credit, financing agriculture and rural America since 1916. Farm Credit is cooperatively owned by America's farmers and ranchers. Learn more at farmcredit.com. Crop Life America, representing the companies whose modern farming innovations help America's farmers provide nutritious food for communities around the globe.
Hi, I'm Sarah Gardner. Hope you're ready to ride on this edition of America's Heartland, because we're saddling up for a show that's all about Heartland horses. We'll take you to California and a wild horse sanctuary that's working to protect animals whose ancestors once roamed the wide open spaces and mountains of the American West. We'll head to Texas. That's certainly horse country, to ride along with singer-songwriter Jewel and her bull riding husband Ty Murray as they round up some cattle on their Lone Star Ranch. Then, two horse stories that take us far from the Old West. We'll meet a big city veterinarian whose work is centered on the growing popularity of horses for recreation. And we'll take you to Kentucky's bluegrass country to visit a retirement home for racehorses. Get ready to ride on America's Heartland.
You can see it in the eyes of every woman and man in America's heartland, living close to the land. There's a love for the country and a pride in the brand. In America's heartland, living close to the land.
You can't talk about the history of American agriculture without first talking about horses. 100 years ago, there were an estimated 25 million horses and mules in America, the majority of them used for farm work. Horses pulled buggies for transportation, and large draft horses were bred specifically to pull the plows and harvesters that broke the soil from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific Ocean. Believe it or not, all of the breeds of horses we know in America today are not native to this country. Way back in prehistoric times, there were horses in what is today the continental U.S. They disappeared, however, thousands of years ago. Spanish explorers reintroduced horses to America in the 1500s, ancestors of the wild mustangs that still roam parts of the West today. There's a good deal of controversy over what's to be done with those horses today. Our Rob Stewart says that discussion has prompted one group in Northern California to mix agriculture and tourism in telling the Mustang story.
Wild horses roam free at the Wild Horse Sanctuary in Shingletown, California. It's a safe haven and a home to more than 300 rescued Mustangs.
The wild horses, I think, have earned their place in America's history. They've done us a good job. They've carried us west. They helped open up the West, and so we do what we can for as many as we can, and we tell the story. And so other people have learned, and other people have followed our lead in creating sanctuaries for them wherever they can.
The journey of saving horses began for rescuer Diane Nelson when she was faced with a life-altering decision.
Over 30 years ago, when the government first started catching wild horses, there were not enough people coming forward or even knew about the program. So at the end of one of our contracts to remove horses from the Modoc National Forest, 80 horses were going to be shot and buried, and that was just more than we could stomach. So we said, we'll take them. We weren't sure what we were going to do with them. We just didn't want them to be killed.
That's when Diane created the Wild Horse Sanctuary, 5,000 fenced-in acres that sprawl across lush, lava-strewn mountains and forest land near Mount Lassen. In 3 decades, Diane has taken in almost 1,000 wild horses to live out their lives in peaceful protection.
There are more than 30,000 wild horses roaming public lands across the western part of the country.
Each year, the government gathers wild horses to place for adoption.
So it really was a leap of faith for you. You had no idea what you were going to
end up doing with this?
No, we didn't. And sometimes when somebody comes to me with more horses that need a home, or especially if it's large numbers, we really have to think about it. And I go back to the beginning and I say, we didn't have anything but 80 hungry horses to think about. Well, now the sanctuary does have a home, and we've got a support base. We know people care. Our big job has turned out to be telling the story. Come over here, right in front of him, and hold your steed.
Diane is telling that story through opening her gates to tourists for day trips or week-long horse journeys through the hills of Wild Horse Sanctuary.
Come on up here.
Even in the pouring rain, 84-year-old Elmo Butts and his daughter Peggy Benton are horseback, headed on a 3-hour trek to our overnight campsite. All along the way, we stop and watch horses in the wild.
I think that for me, it's probably one of those things I think everyone should do because it's such a learning experience. I don't think a lot of people understand the plight of the wild mustangs, and this is beautiful. They're out here. This is where they live, and I think it's great. It's beautiful. Even with the rain, it's been a great day.
It's just something that most people don't get a chance to see, and I think everybody should get out here and see it. I can't put into words what I feel.
Food's on!
The clouds clear, and it's time for a campfire dinner.
There you go. Would you like a camp roll?
And some rest and relaxation. And at dinner time, the wild horses get closer and closer. This is our cabin here at the Wild Horse Sanctuary, and right outside of our door, look, 2 wild horses. They're just over here eating alfalfa that they put out to bring them over, and they're so calm. Just don't get too close. So what will you go back and tell people about this experience?
Well, I would tell them that they're not going to regret it. You know, it would be time well spent. It'd be something that, you know, they'll come back with their photographs and their memories and their stories to tell. And you know, once in a while you take a little side trip, and it's nice when you're out doing it, and a year or two later you don't remember it. This one you'll remember.
Do I see tears in your eyes?
A little bit. Like you said, I feel blessed. I really do. I've had people say that it's as much a sanctuary for people too, though, because in today's hectic world, I think we all would like to be able to have a piece of life like they do, you know, some freedom to be themselves and just enough food. They're not looking for more, they just need enough. And that's what we hope we can give them here.
If you think about it, the transition from horses to tractors meant that American farmers no longer had to plant crops like oats to feed their animals. That opened tillable soil to other crops, including soybeans, the production of which greatly expanded after the 1950s.
There are a lot of horses in the United States, an estimated 9 million at last report. As you might expect, many of them are in the western U.S. But you might be surprised to find out that Florida has a huge population of horses, more than 500,000. California claims around 700,000 horses. And in first place, Texas, where horses are used for recreation and old-time cattle roundups as well. Let's take you to the Lone Star State and a ranch with some famous owners whose lives include time on horseback almost every day. As they saddle up to move cattle on this late summer morning, Jewel and her husband Ty Murray are a long way from the bright lights they often find themselves in.
How about this 90 Club, just yee-haw!
Ty, a world champion rodeo rider.
We've been doing this war dance together.
And Jewel, a singer-songwriter whose albums have sold millions of copies worldwide.
My favorite memories of growing up are probably horses and music. Those two things were always bright spots in a life that, you know, was challenging and difficult.
The hardships that predate Jewel Kilcher's rise to fame are well documented, leaving her rural Alaska home at age 15 for a prestigious art school in Michigan, hitchhiking cross-country, singing in coffee houses to pay the bills, and learning firsthand what it meant to be homeless in America.
But I just fell on hard times. I had sick kidneys, I couldn't afford antibiotics. I almost died in the parking lot of a hospital because they didn't see me because I wouldn't have insurance. And it was just this vicious cycle. I'd try and get a job, but I got sick too much to keep the job, and would end up getting fired again. And
chronicling those hard times with honest, lyric-driven songs would whisk Jewel out of the car she lived in and onto the car radios of millions of listeners.
Yeah, my father's daughter.
Well, I'm a fourth-generation cowboy, so, I grew up around it my whole life.
Growing up in a family where both his parents had riding backgrounds, Ty was at the top of the rodeo game by the age of 21.
I was horseback before I could walk. Riding rough stocking rodeos and ranching, those were the two things that I was crazy about.
The past decade has been a whirlwind for both Ty and Jewel. New album hits and the publication of 2 books for her. Tours on the music and rodeo circuit. Out of the spotlight, their 2,200-acre cattle ranch is where Jewel and Ty come to decompress from their busy professional lives.
I think it's a great place to stay grounded. I mean, our job is a blessing and it's amazing, but it can also be really silly and you can get caught up in the wrong things, and I think this helps you stay really grounded. It's nice to do chores. We'll be doctoring a calf one day and then at the Oscars the next.
When you get out here and the gates are shut, you don't even know the rest of the world's going on. And I think we both really enjoy that, the privacy and the peace and the beauty of it, the lakes and the rivers and all that.
Ranching has proven to be the common thread drawing Jewel and Ty together. So how does a guy go about finding a girl who will come out here and live in the middle of nowhere and help you work the ranch?
She'd just look at me. No, I don't.
It was the smile, right?
I don't know. We, me and Jewel met about 11 years ago, and at the time that Jewel and I met, she was touring really hard, and I was rodeoing really hard, and we were both just on the road constantly.
Life on the ranch gives Jewel time to explore different avenues of creativity.
I really enjoy drawing and sculpture and visual art as much as I enjoy singing, as much as I enjoy writing poetry. It just all feels like the same body. It's just different limbs that I need to exercise.
Ty's work in advancing the profile of the Professional Bull Riders Association is a natural fit with his love of the Heartland's wide open spaces. And time on the ranch provides Jewel and Ty a setting to continue their work as they look to the future.
I'm glad that I was able to both of us were able to go out and do what we wanted to do and have some success and enjoying the fruits of our success.
Texas has plenty of cows to keep cowboys and cowgirls busy. The cattle industry is a $13 billion business, and ranches in the Lone Star State round up more than 13 million cattle.
If you're not a horse owner or rider, you probably have little knowledge about members of the equine family, and you're not alone. We'll talk about how much they weigh a bit later in the show. But what about their height? We thought it was time to ask a farmer.
I'm Laura Casada, and I'd like to ask about measuring horses by hands. What exactly is a hand, and where did that measurement come from?
I get this question all the time. A hand is an ancient measurement, sort of like a foot or a span or a cubit, and it's one of the ones that it's just a relic that we still use today. A hand is equivalent to 4 inches, and so in order for a horse to be a horse-size horse, the horse has to be at least 14'2", which is 14 hands, 2 inches high. The place that we measure that is at the only place on a horse that's always the same height when they're standing square, and that's at their withers, which is at where their neck meets the rest of their body at the top of their shoulder. So So if you want to get an exact measurement, it's a good idea to have the horse standing square, which is his feet right next to each other, and on a level surface as well. So there we go. He's about 15.2, 15.2 and a half. Right there. Good job. Yes.
I mentioned earlier that horses are used for recreational riding, and taking care of your horse is important, not only in the country, but even in areas close to America's largest cities. As you might expect, a big animal is a big investment. For one veterinarian in the Chicago area, that means time on the road to make sure that investment is healthy. Akiba Howard takes us there.
Horses are elite athletes by nature, ready to push their bodies through the most rigorous workout, sometimes to the point of injury.
Open up the right shoulder again. Yeah, really good.
When Catherine Girardi trains too hard, she calls her doctor. When her Morgan horse Rhythm trains too hard, Catherine calls his doctor, a specialist who keeps Rhythm performing in the ring and out.
The main problem with the show horses is they are worked. They are worked every day, going in circles, jumping around. So when that happens, there's a lot of times where they will come up with lame, where they get sore in a leg, and then they can't work. They can't do their job. They can't carry my rider.
Dr. Nikki Wessel is an equine sports medicine specialist. That means not only treating show horses, but also horses ridden for recreation.
Honestly, what we can do in people, we can do in horses anymore now, too. They specialize in cardiology and medicine and surgery, like humans do.
Nikki was only 5 when she decided that working with animals was going to be part of her life.
I started working at the clinic back home when I was 14, and it's mixed animal practice, so it's cows and horses and dogs and cats, and I really knew that my place was not in the office doing dogs and cats. I've always loved the horses, though.
There are millions of horses in the United States, and while many equine doctors ply their trade in the rural corners of America's heartland, Dr. Nikki's practice is centered in Chicago and its surrounding suburbs.
I've got horses that are like these guys here at the farm, where we've got 10, 15 acres and they're out in pasture. That's a rare occurrence in my practice. Most of my horses live in a stall most of the day and go out in a paddock for a couple hours a day for exercise. And honestly, as long as you have the good trainer and the good care, it has no detriment to the horses. It's really not. It's just a change in the way they live, but it's not a detriment to them.
I mean, it's a huge business. I think, at least it was a few years ago, the horse industry was like the second largest industry in Illinois.
America's equine industry extends to not only ranches, but feed companies, fence builders, stable construction, and, of course, veterinarians.
Your back legs are your touchy spot. Stand up. Good boy.
I pay 2 people, my vet and my farrier. And without them, I can't function. I mean, Nikki's job is crucial for me, for keeping the horses sound, not letting them get lame, which is a key to what we do.
Mobility problems can be a common ailment for large 4-legged animals. That's a significant part of the practice.
To diagnose it, I do a lot of work under saddle, so I really like to watch them move. The flexion test, where I, torque a specific joint. I have digital x-rays to dig deeper. We do digital ultrasound, and again, it's just to dig deeper.
Making house calls to large and expensive animals often demands the use of the latest in equine medical equipment, which means Dr. Nikki's mobile office, her truck, comes with the tools she needs for her exams.
So in here, we've got my portable ultrasound, my ophthalmoscope to look in eyes. We have all the drugs and medications I need to treat our horses. My digital x-ray machine is in the cab. There's an egg floating around in her uterus, ready to become a baby.
Dr. Nikki's business has doubled since she began her equine practice, confirmation of the demand in not only rural, but urban areas.
My business is spread by word of mouth. So if my current clients don't like me and don't like what's going on, I ain't gonna get any new ones. So the fact that we are really makes me feel good.
As you might expect, horses are part of her personal life as well. She and her husband have a horse named Cyclone.
It's gonna work. Come on. A good day is the show you saw today. Because the reason they are there is because I fixed them a week or two ago. That is why I do what I do, is to see them smiling, see my clients up there riding that horse and going, yes, I just got a blue ribbon, and I couldn't do that 2 months ago. I love what I do, can you tell?
You probably know what your pet dog or cat weighs, but if you owned a horse, how big would they be? On average, light riding horses can weigh from 850 to 1,200 pounds. Larger riding horses can weigh from 1,100 to almost 1,400 pounds. And the big guys? Draft horses can weigh from 1,500 to more than 2,000 pounds. No surprise, animals that large have a healthy appetite.
You're probably most familiar with horses used in handling livestock or seeing thoroughbreds on television in events like the Kentucky Derby. But what happens to horses like that when their racing days are over? Jason Schultz says a lucky few will spend their golden years in the bluegrass state.
They were born and bred to run. Thoroughbred racehorses, some who earn millions for their owners. But where do they go once they've retired their racing saddles? If they're lucky, they'll end up on the rolling countryside of central Kentucky, here at Dream Chase Farm.
Come on, you big horse. Basically, it's a retirement home for old thoroughbreds. It's kind of like having Larry Bird and Magic Johnson here if you're a racing fan. We have horses that won the Breeders' Cup. We have horses that won Eclipse Awards, which is like winning the Oscar. Do you want to run a little? You want to run?
He's an unlikely horse farm owner who made a name for himself far from the quiet countryside. For years, Michael Blowen was the film critic for the Boston Globe newspaper. He fell in love with horse racing and ultimately the horses themselves, buying his own horses in Boston and following horse racing. But he was increasingly bothered by the fate of the horses when their careers ended. When done racing and being used for breeding, in the past most racehorses ended up at the slaughterhouse.
And that always stuck in the back of my mind. And I thought, well, gee whiz, if I ever get a chance to do anything about this, I'm going to take a shot at it. I guess I identify with them because my racing breeding career is over too, so we have that in common. But they were much better athletes than I was, so I guess that's where it ends.
So after retirement from the newspaper, he and his wife, Diane White, a Globe columnist herself, purchased Dream Chase and formed Old Friends Equine with one goal: provide homes for as many retired racehorses as possible.
Year 1991.
Right now, Old Friends provides homes for about 100 horses. It costs about $10,000 per horse per year for upkeep. Despite the revenue the horses generated in their running days, Michael and his staff rely on donations.
You feel like, you know, for all the entertainment and all the money that gets made off of these horses, you feel like this is the least we can do?
Yeah, this is the least we can do. And we should be doing better. I mean, at Old Friends, we take care of 100 horses now. We just got our 100th horse, and it's still a drop in the bucket.
Michael says attitudes toward post-racing care of horses are changing in Kentucky. Horse veterinarian Doug Byers says more needs to be done.
The horse industry needs more Michael Blowens. The industry does not keep pace with demands that these horses are being created or put in position to. So basically it's donations. There's no USDA dollar. It's all benevolent support. It needs to change.
That needs to be stepped up.
It needs to be stepped up into where the industry takes responsibility.
Doug Byers says that the work done here at Dream Chase Farm provides one approach to addressing the question of animal welfare and a reasonable solution to a growing problem of where horses like this may end up.
Some people literally abandon them. Take them out to the strip mine areas and turn them loose on government land or other places. They consider that as an appropriate solution, which it's not.
While horse lovers say most states have yet to consider the long-term welfare issue of working animals like these, they applaud Michael Blowen's efforts. Tourists stop by to see famed horses they remember from racing days gone by. It's proof, Michael says, that this model can work elsewhere.
This is a lot different than writing movie reviews for the Boston Globe.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank goodness. I love doing that, of course. I couldn't imagine doing anything that was more fun then, and I can't imagine doing anything that's more fun now.
That's going to do it for this time. Thanks for traveling the country with us on this edition of America's Heartland. We're always pleased that you can join us.
We know that we pass along a lot of information to you in every program, and in case you missed something or you just want to check out our videos from this or other shows, we make it easy. Just log on to our website at americasheartland.org. And of course, there's lots going on in our social media arena. You'll find us there as well. We'll see you next time on America's Heartland.
You can purchase a DVD or Blu-ray copy of this program. Here's the cost. To order, just visit us online or call 888-814-3923.
You can see it in the eyes of every woman and man in America's heartland, living close to the land. There's a love for the country and a pride in the brand in America's heartland, living close to the land.
America's Heartland is made possible by Farm Credit, financing agriculture and rural America since 1916. Farm Credit is cooperatively owned by America's farmers and ranchers. Learn more at farmcredit.com. Crop Life America, representing the companies whose modern farming innovations help America's farmers provide nutritious food for communities around the globe.